got to a point where I had urges to, you know, do harmful things to myself and urges to yeah, just ultimately end my life because I didn't know what to do. It's been such a learning experience because of how much I suffered through the process and how much fear there was and where I am now. And now where I am, I can reach out and help people just from perspective. And the perspective that I've gained is so precious just from not just sleep, but mental health and my whole life. And like where I am now, I'm like, how was I so afraid? Like, who was that person? So here I am now, I've been sleeping. But yeah, it was a very dark place.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to yet another special Talking Insomnia episode. We have Zev with us. Thanks so much for being here, Zev. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, yeah.
So, for those of you who don't know, Zev, you are a member of our Insomnia Immunity program, and I remember you from that time, and I got an email from you saying you'd be happy to be a guest, and I was like, of course, I'd love to hear your story. So, with that said, welcome again, and yeah, tell us in yours. How did you start having trouble sleeping?
Yeah, so basically, my troubles started over 7 years ago. I was in grade 9, I was 14 years old, and I was a competitive swimmer. I was swimming 7 times a week. It was a very competitive environment. The one thing that got to me, though, because I had been swimming for 4 years prior, is I had a very terrible coach. He was aggressive, he was angry, just a very difficult person to be around. From that year, I was stressed about practice and stressed about showing up, but I felt the pressure and the whole thing compounded. It ended up with insomnia and nights staying up till 1 a.m., stress, throwing up from stress, just fear all of the time, and confusion because I really didn't know what to do. So I think a month or two after realizing I'm really having some sleep problems, I went to a sleep clinic, and the woman, she gave me sleep hygiene, which was something that was very like unusual and almost unsettling to me. And it would almost seem like there's a thing that I have to do with sleep hygiene that will get me to sleep. And it's because there's all these rules of sleep hygiene. You have to do this and this. And so I tried to follow them, but they really didn't work. And so I think I kind of let them go, and I tried my best, but it didn't work. And I continued to see her, but really nothing was happening. And I just felt more lost. Anyways, the struggles continued into grade 10, where I developed kind of into depression and more confusion. I stopped swimming because of the stress from the insomnia and just not knowing what to do.
And
And
sorry to jump in here, Zev, but I just want to ask you a question real quickly. Was there an element of like your coach or other people or from like things you hear on the internet? Was there a pressure that came from like, oh, I gotta get enough sleep so I can perform well as a swimmer?
exactly, and I was freaked out about that, thinking that, "Oh my god, I'm not getting enough sleep." Even the question of, "Am I gonna die?" was present. It's like, "What's going on? I have no idea." It was very scary. It's a long time ago, and but anyways, yeah, that was for sure present. And I looked things up online and I went down rabbit holes, but and the rabbit holes continued. Grade 9 wasn't even the worst of it, but they continued into grade 10, and then from grade 10 they went into grade 11, being 16, and then 17 in grade 12, and then first year university. And throughout all this time, especially grade 12 and first year, I would go down deep dark insomnia rabbit holes. Where I'm standing now, better, it's almost hard to put my mind back in that state, but where I was back then was beyond scary, thinking like, "Oh my god, I'm never gonna sleep again." Even though I've had insomnia for 5 or 6 years, thinking, "Oh my god, what if I die from insomnia? What if I do not forget how to sleep?" Because at this time, I was sleeping I had maybe 1 good night's sleep every 3 weeks, 2 weeks, and then the rest was just hyper sleep, which is, if anyone out there has experienced it, it's like light sleep. It doesn't feel like you're sleeping. High hyperarousal states during the day, and this translated into nights of very scary, very restless sleep. And of course, I was sleeping and I was getting rest, but in my mind, I had this monster that was created that, oh my God, what's going on? I don't know what to do. Just freaking out. Uh,
And sorry again, but are you? How about like you're very young at this point? Are you telling your friends, your parents, or are you kind of isolated about this, or what's going on?
Telling everyone, asking anyone for anything, any kind of help, any kind of direction. trying sleep hygiene. I really was trying at that time to do a set bedtime, set wake up time, which was like a 7-hour window. And it was so painful. I was like trying my best to stay within these time, and I was so tired during the day, and it didn't work every minute. I mean, it helped a little bit, but in the long run, it really wasn't sustainable. And yeah, so from there, it's great. First year university, I was living by myself in a dorm, and other mental health issues like compounded as well. I've always been kind of an outcast, kind of a outside kind of individual, struggling with friendships and stuff like that in school. And this translated to university and became much more difficult because I was on my own, of course, and the insomnia and the anxiety, it all compounded into this very unknowing, very threatening environment that I felt. And so from there, I was in grade 12, and then really difficult with social issues. And then the year after, I just couldn't stay in school. Bunch of my marks dropped, a bunch of just difficulty, just too much, a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty. And I was looking for the one thing that was gonna make me sleep, or the one thing that was gonna cure my issues with anxiety and insomnia. So I tried meditation. And this had been going on since grade 11, trying spirituality. I tried ultra running, like running very far distances past marathons. I tried trying to fit into a social group. I mean, mainly it was spirituality and meditation, which worked to a degree, but then it just kind of left me with more uncertainty and fear as I had no one to really guide me in these things. And when I did my meditations, I ended up getting a little bit more lost in my mind than actually finding some sort of balance. So this was incredibly difficult, incredibly scary. And then the year I took off, it just got worse. I thought, "I'm gonna take a year off, I'm gonna figure out my problems, I'm gonna get a job, I'm gonna work." I don't and I had ideas of going to technical college, technical school, and leaving university, and I was like, "Okay, this is what I'm gonna do," and it just got worse. Couldn't hold a job for long. The anxiety and the rabbit holes I was going down were deeper and deeper, where they're like, weeks of feeling like I hadn't slept, even though of course I was sleeping. But in my mind, I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Why aren't I feeling rested? And when the times when I would feel rested, or like it would be so fleeting, and I would be trying to grasp onto it. And there was lots of moments too where I was about to fall into, or felt like I was about to fall into deep sleep, and something would wake me up, and it was frustrating and scary. And I thought, and at this time I was almost 100% convinced that I might not be able to sleep well ever again consistently, and I might not ever be able to recover from what I'm going with. And where's the one thing? Where's the one answer? I went back to the original doctor who I saw, and she just gave me more sleep hygiene tips. And when those didn't work, she didn't drop me as a patient, but she kind of gave me the information, and was like, "This is all I have," which is disheartening and scary. And this got worse and worse, and ended me up at a mental health hospital in my city. I It was 3 in the morning, night after night after night of not sleeping. I felt like I was losing my mind. And I went, and of course, like, I went there, and I was like, "I'm not sleeping." I wasn't, I wasn't gonna self-harm. I just wasn't sleeping well, and I was freaked out about it. And they couldn't really do anything for me. They're like, "Why don't you, go and ask for talk to your psychiatrist?" So I had a psychiatrist at the point. Ended up prescribing me sleeping about medication for anxiety and for sleep, which didn't work with me, which made me feel worse ultimately. And luckily, I was able to get the psychiatrist, but the medications didn't do anything. And then I went back another time, and after months went by of fear, and they gave me Ativan, just like a small prescription, and sent me on my way after waiting there for like 5 or 6 hours. Because of course, the institution like that is for people who are in deep psychosis, or who are planning to kill themselves, not people who feel like they haven't slept. And so all this struggle and everything that was going on was, I was afraid for my life almost every single day, thinking I was gonna die, and looking for the one thing, still looking for what is that one thing that I'm not doing, looking at influencers online, going all over. Anyways, it got really bad, and I got to a point where I was suicidal, and I didn't know, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I got to a point where I had urges to, you know, do harmful things to myself and urges to yeah, just ultimately end my life because I didn't know what to do. And luckily enough, my aunt, I talked to her about it and she said, you know, you really should go to a hospital. So I went to a psychiatric ward in the city and was admitted through my psychiatrist's help and was put on an SSRI, common one, Zoloft, and was on it. Um, and in the hospital, I slept better because the fear wasn't there. I was like, something's wrong, but I'm being taken care of, and so I slept slightly better. Um, and I did, and let me backtrack just a bit. But when it's in university, when no, I was in my year off when I came across your channel and the teachings here, and which is a big part of the story, which I became part of the coaching program, and I was learning under all of the philosophy, and I read Set It and Forget It and Letters to NATO. Um, Yeah, so I learned everything and I was looking at YouTube, but even knowing the information that you had, my fear overtook it. And even going through a very helpful coaching program, my fear and my uncertainty said, there's one thing that you have to find, this method's not going to work for you. But in the back of my mind, I always had the teachings and the ideas like, okay, maybe there's something here that can work. There was times when it worked, but it was my brain was in such a terrible state that, really applying any of these teachings, it's got to, like, 5 or 6 years and some insomnia, I had 0 faith in anything that was gonna take me out of the situation. And another interesting thing was I was at a convention and this is kind of a sidetrack, but I'll get back to the story, and I met a guy, and we talked, and he told me he had insomnia for 35 years, talking about hypersleep and talking about all of these things. And he was saying how terrible it is and how dangerous it is and how bad it is for your health and all of these things. And I looked at him and I I asked him how old he was, just out of sheer curiosity. Um, and he told me he was in his 60s, and I'm like, "Wow, you look 40. You don't look like you're in your 60s." I'm like, "What's going on?" And he seemed completely fine. He just seemed freaked out about insomnia, which was me, but seemed otherwise completely fine. That was very striking, and I came to a realization, even though I couldn't apply the techniques in my own life of set it and forget it, I came to a realization that, like, I don't wanna be 35 years down the line and still worried about me not sleeping. Well, of course, I'm sleeping. Anyways, so yeah, getting back to in the ward, on a medication, and I told my doctor, I don't freaking out to him about my sleep. He's like, "You know Zev, you can't trick your body out of sleep. Your body will take sleep. There's nothing you can do about it." He said, "It's easier to starve yourself to death with food around than to deprive yourself of sleep." And that kinda hit me. I was like, "Oh," like, I know that, and I knew that kind of, but for him, a psychiatrist to tell me this, it really it was like, "Oh, really?" So, while I was in the hospital, I tried a 9-hour sleep window that I tried because wake up would be at 8:30, and I tried, like, 11 till 8:30 or whatever it was, 11 till 8, and that really helped while I was in the hospital, and they put me on these drugs, and my sleep was improving and my fear was improving too. Although my fear kind of shifted to worrying about another thing. And what happened, full disclosure, in the spirit of full disclosure, I left the hospital. 2 weeks went by. I was on the meds and I was sleeping great. But the meds, I had a side effects, and which ended me up being psychotic. I had a psychotic break 2 weeks later from the meds, which is something that can happen. Back to the hospital, I'm sleeping terrible again, back in the hospital, but I'm still trying to keep that 11 till 8 thing. Uh, Time goes by, I'm in the hospital, they put me on antipsychotics, and those really helped with my brain, and this is probably just a me story. Maybe it applies to one person out there, and so it's not so common that you take SSRIs and it creates psychosis, but it happened to me, and the antipsychotics help so much with just turning down the noise in my mind and allowing me to actually practice the teachings of set and forget and the teachings of mindfulness and spirituality without having the disadvantage of having a brain that reverts to psychosis and psychotic tendencies. So anyways, that happened, left the hospitals, and was was stable enough so that I could follow a 9-hour sleep window practice. And so I did, 11 p.m. to 8 a.m. every single day, no matter if I felt like I slept tardy, no matter, at first I was scared and I was afraid. I mean, it wasn't as bad because of, some help and this here and there, but I was still afraid when I didn't sleep well, and I was still freaked out when I had the hypersleep. But I continued and I stayed 11 p.m., 8 a.m., 11 p.m., 8 a.m. every single day. And eventually I started sleeping really well. And it was weird because it was the opposite of finding one thing. It was setting a bedtime and a wake time every single day. That the fear, like, as you've said before, as I've heard, it goes away, it diminishes, it fades, and it did, and it faded. And then the time change happened, and and then I kept my schedule though, but I shifted it back an hour, so 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then I had some rough time sleeping, and then the fear and the freaking out and sticking to the schedule, and the fear and the freaking out, back to 10 p.m., 7 a.m., 10 p.m., 7 a.m. And yeah, and so, I'm on these drugs that help with the psychotic elements, but there wasn't it was sticking to the schedule and doing it every single day. Like, I'm not afraid anymore. I'll have 5 or 4 nights of great sleep, 2 nights of not great sleep, 2 weeks of great sleep, but, 1 night of not great, and I'm not afraid, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, this is my body doing its thing. This is it." So, 9:30 p.m. rolls around. I'm usually tired. I lie down in bed and listen to a podcast. And when I start to doze off, I put the podcast down, go to sleep, put my earplugs in, whatever. Wake up at 7 a.m. consistently every day. It works. I'm sleeping great. I'm not afraid. And you can't, like the doctor said, kill like die from not sleeping. Your body will take sleep. Like, you can't, it's not possible. But I was so afraid, and, like, where I am now, I'm like, "How was I so afraid? Like, who was that person?" But I see, like, of course, that person existed, and where I was when I was in the coaching program, I thought I was never gonna recover from insomnia, and recovery it doesn't even feel right to say recovery, 'cause there was nothing to recover from. Like, I was never not getting sleep. My body was always taking sleep. I guess it's moving away from the fear, recovery from the fear insomnia, but yeah, so here I am now. I've been sleeping, but yeah, it was a very dark place. It was.
Wow. No, thanks for sharing this. Like you told your story in such a powerful way, and with such like such difficult times, and in all elements, I'm sure will actually resonate with a lot of people in our community. And I want to ask you a few things. You said that you at some point decided you were going to do this kind of 9-hour sleep window, and you actually stuck with this time. In the past, what was it that made it like difficult to stick with it? Was it kind of like hard to get up in the morning? Was it that part, or what was it that was difficult before?
It would be a night of not sleeping, a night of freaking out, and then 7 a.m. or whatever my sleep window rolls around, and I'm like, "I'm not getting up. I'm gonna die if I don't get any more sleep." That was my thought process. So, once I was getting help from something external, then it was almost like, "Oh, I have something to fall back on. I'm not." The fear is just turned down a bit, and I look back and I think I probably, if I had the right understanding and support in my own personal life, maybe I could have stuck to that schedule, but there was just too much fear.
Yeah,
So
completely understand. And I want to actually just emphasize something that your psychiatrist said, that I say almost the exact same thing, that you know, not getting enough food, that can be dangerous. We can literally die from not eating enough, right? But with sleep, that cannot happen. And the difference is that our body cannot just produce food by itself. It has to get that from the outside, but our body can just produce sleep by itself. That's why we can't, starve ourselves to a point where we are harmed by not getting enough
Mm.
sleep, because the body just produces it by itself. So I'm so glad you came across that, and that it was helpful. And oh yeah, I just want to emphasize something more for our community, for people tuning in here, and then of course I want to hear your thoughts on this. But when people ask about this, like the sleep window and having some regularity around there, I often say that I think it can be really helpful, but often maybe not in the way that people think. You know, the reason it can be so helpful, I often emphasize that it's because it can take us from like chasing sleep. So when we decided that I'm going to get up at this time, then that can keep us from exactly what you described, when we're like, I got to get more sleep, I'm going to stay in bed, so I'm going to try to get more sleep. And that is, insomnia comes from that place, when we're like desperately trying to get more sleep. So having a routine where we're kind of like, no, I'm not going to chase sleep, that can be really helpful, as opposed to when people think like, oh, if I have this routine is going to make me sleep, then it becomes tricky,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Yeah, I have like my 7 to 11 a.m. 10 p.m. 7 a.m. is like one piece of the puzzle for me in my own life because of the other mental health issues that I struggle with. So I have a very rigorous schedule that has nothing that puts sleep as it stays the same, but everything else in my life has a rigorous schedule. I wake up, I read 5 pages of my book. I take either a cold shower or a cold plunge outside for 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 30 seconds, which has helped me because I used to be quote unquote addicted to YouTube, social media, all of that. And the cold just takes that away. And another thing, if I don't sleep well and I force myself to go into the cold, it's just reinforcing to my body that there's not an issue here, that like I'm doing something that's so extreme, which is the cold, and my body's fine. It's absolutely fine. So that's been an element of it as well. I make sure to eat balanced. I have journaling at night, mindfulness techniques for anxiety and worry. I'm engaged in DBT with my therapist, which is dialectical behavioral therapy. If anyone's struggling with mental health stuff, it's the gold standard. It's the most comprehensive and engages mindfulness and CBT and kind of puts them together. And all of this in my other parts of my life have really helped. I do breath work at night. If anyone's looking for that kind of thing, Wim Hof method, so helpful. It's changed my life. He's a big proprietor of the cold exposure and the breath work. But so yeah, there's lots of things that I do to keep my baseline stable, but the sleep thing just worked itself out. It works itself out once you, for me, and I'm sure for lots of people, if I had done it earlier, having the set time, set wake up time, because then you can't be afraid, because then like even the nights when I'm not tired at 10 p.m. I wait. I listen to my podcast. I enjoy it. I lie in bed. I enjoy luxury it in the podcast or whatever it is that you enjoy doing. And then, the sleep comes in, and I know the sleep window. It's big enough too. 9 to 9 hours is it's big enough for me to get the rest that I need, even if it's, broken or whatever. I'm still getting exactly what I need.
It's amazing, so wonderful. It's, especially coming from such a difficult place to hear. It's so wonderful to hear this, and you would comment on some things you said, and then of course hear your take on this. But a lot of people in the community, of course, they ask about exactly these things, like, should I take like a maybe cold shower? Should I do breath work? Should I journal? Should I do this and that? And what I always reply to that is like, it's really the intent that matters. If somebody is like having a panic attack and they're like, I got to stop this panic attack by doing breath work now, then it's not going to help, because that person's kind of trying to escape kind of their emotions, right? On
Mhm.
the other hand, anything we do when the intent is kind of like, this will make it a little bit easier for me to feel scared if I feel scared, or to experience whatever emotions I have, right? That can be really helpful. So, does it resonate with you?
Oh, for sure, yeah, and having like I do it, not as a coping skill, but as a just put into my schedule, forcing myself to do it every day or whatever, so it doesn't become a game of chasing and running and chasing. It becomes just a practice for sure. The other thing is like it's not like when I do these practices, I'm not doing them like I would in the past to fix or sort my insomnia. I do it now because it makes me feel good during the day and it keeps me balanced. So
Very nice to hear. I want to ask you also maybe two more questions. One is if you could, travel back in time and to that first stretch of insomnia where that was related to swimming and the coach, etc. Like, what would you tell yourself?
I tell my younger self to leave that swim group, I'd say, and I'd apologize for making him stay in it for so long, and then I would tell him, "Don't worry about your sleep." I told this to my younger brother actually, who was having some trouble with he was experiencing light sleep, and I told him, "Light sleep doesn't exist. Your body is sleeping. It's taking the rest it needs. Don't worry." And he doesn't worry, and I've even come back to him and be like, "Oh my god, I'm having light sleep." He's like, "It doesn't exist, Sam. Your body is sleeping." But yeah, I'd say just, set a bedtime, set a wake up time, and forget about it. And if you're up till 12 a.m. anxious, that's fine. Still wake up at the same time every day. And I tell him to get therapy because he needs it. And I tell him that he's not alone and to ask for help. And but mainly for the sleep, it's the set bedtime, set wake time. I think that's
Uh,
really impactful.
I think that would be really helpful advice for yourself, and so nice you're helping your brother. And just one question came to my mind at this point, and it was this one. A lot of people that hear this will maybe go like, "But hey, what if I want to sleep in?" Like something like that. What would you respond to that?
On Saturdays, I give myself the day off from all of my, cold showers and breathing and all of that, and I give myself the ability to sleep in if I want, and I found that I don't get like 9 hours is more than enough for me, and I don't have the urge to sleep in so much, and maybe I'm a little tired, and that's fine. I'll just Saturdays, I give myself the time and space, but for the rest of the week, I don't give myself that leeway just because of the chasing and grabbing that can fall into that, even though I don't think it would happen now because my fear is like 1/25th, 1/50th of what it was. I still only give myself the Saturday.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Then that's I always tell people like it's again more about intent. Like if you're up late and you just want to sleep in, that's totally fine when it's not like the chasing sleep. I gotta get more sleep, and in reality, I think most people actually have a very similar schedule to you, right? Most of us get up about the same time during weekday, and then weekends we sleep in a little bit, something like that. And the one thing, and I'm going to say this more for the community, again, curious to hear your thoughts on this is when, if we for some reason have some trouble sleeping, and maybe we're a little bit stressed, we have a couple of nights where we have choppy sleep, and then we start to think like, oh no, like my sleep schedule isn't working. Oh no, my cold showers isn't working. Oh no, this isn't working anymore. Then that's kind of an opportunity for learning for us. Then we can be like, aha, this has started to become a little bit of an effort for me again, right? Just for everyone to know. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's that, and it's also bravery, and a lot of it's a lot of bravery to have a set bedtime and set wake up time, especially if in the depths of insomnia. It is a lot of bravery. Yeah, it's so much, and when you're in that place where you're afraid for your life, that's when you hold on and say, I see this, and I'm gonna continue, and I'm gonna get out of bed, and I'm gonna take that cold shower." A and it fades, it changes, it goes, you learn, and the system learns to work in corresponds with itself again, and things start to flow, but it's that bravery that's key.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And you know, it's interesting because you're in one way, like you're saying, like it's just about to continue doing what you're doing, which is another way of saying like not changing anything, like not kind of reacting to it or not starting to chase something or escape something. Just in a sense like continuing doing what you're doing is another way of saying like not doing anything differently, not responding to it in a way. So that's super helpful. And yeah, so the other question I have for you is you know this learning from the struggle through insomnia or from the sleep struggle, has it been helpful in other areas of life?
For sure. Um, I think the whole struggle that I've been through from the beginning to where I am now, it's been the most learning experience I've ever had. It's been more difficult, more challenging than school. It's been more just the mental health journey and all. It's been such a learning experience because of how much I suffered through the process and how much fear there was and where I am now. And now where I am, I can reach out and help people who were in a similar place to where I was before, just from perspective, and the perspective that I've gained is so, so precious just from not just sleep, but mental health and my whole life. It's just, like, oh, things change and they pass and they're moving and what can I do that's the same while everything changes, and how can I get a little bit of space from that change so I can be the observer and not the one who's pushed and pulled in all of the directions at the same time, and just be the one who's can sit and watch. And that's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, that's amazing insight. And as you were sharing this, I was thinking about how pretty early in this journey, you were actually seeking out sort of like spiritual teachings. I'm guessing you read books around that point. Like what you're saying now, it's very clear that this became this like spiritual journey in sense of like self-exploration, learning about ourselves, the human mind, etc. But maybe I'm looking for some commentary on how like it became the spiritual journey, but not necessarily when you were like starting out and kind of approaching like these spiritual teachings as a means of like maybe problem solving, but it became that anyhow. Like thoughts on that?
Yeah, initially when I was looking at spirituality, it was to fix, it was to change, it was to manipulate. And now when I see and approach spirituality, it's to true spirituality for me is separation between the self, the thing that's behind everything, the thing that doesn't change, that's not impacted by who you think you are or who society says you are. It's that ever non-changing place, and it's the distinction between that and then everything on the outside. And that's what I think my cold showers and breath work does, is it gives me that space. And as well as the set it and forget it method, it gives me that space where it's like, at first it was me dragging myself through, and which comes the bravery of dragging myself through the process. But now it's the understanding that no matter what happens to me, there's always me, which is the awareness, and me, which is experiencing life and experiencing the pain and the pleasure and the beautiful and the terrible. But behind all of that is just the center of awareness, which is, I think, what the true spirituality is. And it's not, yeah, it's not the grasping that it once was of trying to find an answer, but it's just the thing that falls into place, and the understanding that as bad as it gets, as terrible as it gets, I'm not the thing that is getting, I'm the one behind it. I'm not being dragged anymore.
Wonderful. Yeah. Amazingly said. Wow. Well, I just want to say, Zev, thanks so much for being a guest today. You shared some incredible teachings for our community. So I'll and say thanks so much for being here, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, thank you so much. And if anyone has any questions about my story, feel free to DM me on Instagram at nextlevelz and xtlevelz. If you have any questions or any concerns, or have any questions at all. Yeah. Thank you.
Anytime. And we'll put all that in the description for anyone hearing this. So thanks again, Zev, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah.
Hi, it's me, Coach Daniel, and I hope you are feeling excited right now because you're so close to the finish line of Insomnia. And if you found that aha moment you've been looking for in this video, please share it with the world. Because insomnia can be such a lonely and isolating place before you find our community. Speaking of which, if you would like some more personalized support on your journey, then head over to thesleepcoachschool.com. We have free and paid courses available with certified sleep coaches who have seen the worst of insomnia, left the struggle, and now are ready to help you. If you decide to join, we look forward to seeing you on the other side.